Hello and welcome back to the channel, Nerds and Nerdettes. Today we have yet another video for you guys. Today we're going to go over my top 5 favorite books in my collection or set of books. A little bit of a spoiler there. A couple kind of rules and things to keep in mind pertaining to my list. One, I did exclude Berserk. Berserk's my favorite thing that I've ever read. If it was allowed to appear on this list, 1 through 5 would be different volumes of Berserk, so I had to exclude it for that reason, but it does get an honorable mention because of that. And also, I am limiting the list to what's in my collection, in my collected editions collection. Say that 3 times fast, jeez. So if I collected it in single issues at any point or anything like that, it's also going to be excluded from this list. It's only collected editions, and it's only pertaining to my specific collection. So if a book that you have or you really like isn't on this list, it could be either one, it didn't resonate with me as much as it did with you, and you're definitely entitled to your opinion as I am to mine, or it's just not in my collection, and I'm working my way to getting it. Another thing to keep in mind, this is not going to be in any crazy specific order, and this is also not me saying that these are amazing masterclass books or stories. This is just more of the impact these books have on me or the value that these books have on me due to either nostalgia, the way they make me feel, or how much I enjoyed myself reading them. But with that being said, we can jump to the list with number 5, which is of course the Ultimates Omnibus. This book is incredibly important to me. If you guys have watched any of my previous videos, my first comic that I ever purchased and collected in single issue was Ultimates issue 2. This is the MCU before the MCU was a thing, when I wanted a grounded and realistic, somewhat edgy take, whatever I was into when I was a kid of the Marvel Universe. This was my answer to it. This was my favorite incarnation of Cap. I thought he was just incredibly badass and just stand up. He wasn't afraid of anyone and wouldn't take anything from anyone. He would literally stand toe to toe with the Hulk or Giant Man, and I absolutely love the way Cap is written in this book. Besides that reason, this was also one of my early omnibuses that I first collected. I believe it was World War Hulk was my first one. This was actually my second or third omnibus. And I remember getting it in hand, opening it up, and that flip open page, everyone knows what I'm talking about, the MCU style battle scene just literally knocked my socks off. I remember it in this oversized format, art shining, beautiful Brian Hitch artwork, and Mark Miller, one of my favorite writers, just completely knocked my socks off. I was all the way to the moon, through the moon, as soon as I got this in the mail, and for those exact reasons is exactly why it's number 5 on the list. And we can go ahead and move to number 4, which is none other than the Teen Titans by Jeff Johns omnibus, the brick that is this book. This book carries not only a lot of nostalgia, but quite a bit of joy. Whenever I read the stories that are in here, I feel like a kid again. I feel like Jeff Johns does an amazing job encapsulating that teen angst, that teen energy. When you're a child and you look up to these people that are larger than life and you try to emulate them and become them, I think he does great doing that. As well as this is the era where Tim Drake definitely went through a lot of trials and tribulations because of 2 major deaths of his very close friends. I won't give away who those people are, but it changed him very drastically, and that resonated with me a lot as a kid. And I think the team and the dialogue between each of the team members really feels like something that characters of this age group would actually be saying to one another if they somehow found themselves being superheroes. And of course, Superboy, Connor Kent, I probably like him more than Superman just because he's a younger Superman essentially, and he has powers that he's struggling with gaining a grasp on, as well as his upbringing and origin and how he came to be tormenting him along the way. He's a very interesting character, and he's very prominent in this book and plays a huge role. and him being one of my favorite characters for those reasons and having such a large role makes this book that much better. I completely adore all the characters and the relationships that take place in here, and because of those reasons, that's why it's going to be number 4 on my list. But with that being said, we can go ahead and move to number 3, and that is the one and only Infinite Crisis Omnibus. For me, this is the epitome of comic book events. I feel like stakes were incredibly high, and you really had no idea what was going to happen next. You didn't know who was safe, especially after the whole Maxwell Lord scene, which if you write it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, as well as the other Maxwell Lord scene, where one of our very important characters in the DC universe has to pretty much act in a very brutal way. Not trying to avoid spoilers as much as possible. I don't want anybody to shy away from reading this because it's really an amazing book. But yeah, this was a blockbuster style of story before I ever saw characters on the big screen or anything like that. So many intertwining stories that had villains that were like introduction villains that would lead to the next and to the next, and then eventually to the big bad Superboy Prime being one of my all-time favorite villains. I mean, just a total jerk that just happens to have the powers of Superboy, or Superman rather. I've never hated a character more than Superboy Prime, especially when we get closer to the climax and a very, very large death takes place. It made me actually feel something while reading it, which we all want. We're all somewhat attracted to feeling those emotions while reading a book, whether it be tragedy or joy or whatever it may be. But this story, this book is really something special, and for me at least, you guys can definitely let me know down below if you agree or what your event is, but this is my event. When I think of blockbuster, amazing, eye-catching, just mouth-watering comic books, this is what I envision. This is Infinite Crisis, the Omnibus, and it is number 3. But with that being said, we can move to number 2 on the list, and that will be Civil War by Marvel. Sorry I had to move over here due to lighting issues. But we have Mark Millar, again, one of my favorite writers. Steve McNiven, probably one of the best artists in the game, writing a story with very divisive thoughts coming to a head. In this book, again, the stakes are extremely high, especially with the first scene involving Nitro. And what happens there, you definitely know almost immediately that this is going to be a book that is going to affect the Marvel Universe going forward, and it absolutely does, which is 100% why it deserves an omnibus. Please, Marvel, don't get me started on that tirade. But this book has all the makings very similar to Infinite Crisis that attracts us as readers. You have high stakes, you have friendships and relationships being tested, from Captain America and Iron Man's relationship being tested and strained because of obvious reasons, to Tony Stark and Peter Parker's, to even the Fantastic Four being divided. It's incredibly dynamic in its storytelling and extremely divisive, not only in the community as far as people liking or disliking this story, but also the views that are the encapsulation of this entire story. You have Cap, who is a man that lives by kind of traditional values and morals, and he's willing to fight tooth and nail to protect those things. And you have Tony Stark, who in a way represents the overcorrectors, the overcorrectors of the world, and he sees something bad happen and he wants to go above and beyond to try and make things right. I've heard some criticism as far as they feel like Cap is made the hero while Iron Man is made the villain, but I disagree. I think based on your mindset and your views on the actual tragic events that take place that lead up to Civil War, I think you could definitely side with either side. They both go to an extreme level and take extreme measures where of course they cross the line, but without saying more, it's definitely worth reading, and it's definitely worthy of its spot for number 2. But with that being wrapped up, we can go ahead and move to number 1. And number 1 is the Calvin and Hobbes I guess, box set, collector's edition, whatever you would want to call it. I'm not too sure what the official name is. I'm sorry that I'm like peering behind this. This is absolutely a beast, a monster of a set. But this is a book that my fiance's father, who is no longer with us, was very passionate about and really enjoyed. But it also happens to be a book that I absolutely love. I am a huge fan of Calvin and Hobbes, and as a child I would always write my own Calvin and Hobbes comic books, but with my stuffed animal friends or whatever I was doing as a child at the time. And I feel like even though he's no longer with us, this is my way of connecting with him and having something that we have in common, which I think honestly is books in general, but this was actually his, and it's now part of the collection, a little piece of him. And that gives it a lot of sentimental value, as well as the fact that it's a story that I read when I was a child, and it gives me those feelings again. It gives me the feeling of sitting in English class or whatever class it was and reading my Calvin and Hobbes books that I found in the library or got at my local library or that my parents got me, whatever it may be. And I absolutely love it. It gives newspaper comic vibes also when you flip through its pages, and it's an awesome collection to have in this beautiful box set and these beautiful hardcovers. And I definitely recommend anybody that does like newspaper comic strip style comics, definitely give this a try if you haven't. It's super funny, super entertaining, and it really makes you feel like a kid again. But with that being said, that wraps up the list. So, as always, let me know down below. I am very curious what books in you guys' collections, or maybe even in my collection, that you guys have seen that holds a lot of value to you, either because of the story, sentimental value, whatever it may be, because that honestly is what defines us as nerds and makes each of our experiences, likes and dislikes, very different. And I find that very interesting, that one book that could be completely something that that person has no interest in could be the most important book for another person in their collection as well. So let me know down below what books are important to you, or what books have changed your life or you enjoyed reading recently even. Also let me know down below some reading recommendations. I'm always looking for new material to read. While I've read quite a bit, I have not read everything, of course. There's always new things that I am looking for or attempting to get familiar with, especially in the indie titles game. I would also like to thank you guys, each and every one of you, for subscribing and commenting. It really helps out a lot, but it also just leaves me astounded. As I said before, I am absolutely just amazed at the love and support from you guys, and it definitely keeps pushing me along making these videos and enjoying the aspect of creating a community with you guys' help. But of course, for any new viewers, if you would like to join the Illuminati, you can go ahead down below and hit that subscribe button. You can also hit that bell notification. You'll get notified anytime I put out content. I put out videos on Mondays and Fridays, as well as some shorts in between. I would also appreciate if you guys could hit that thumbs up icon. It really helps out the channel. It helps the algorithm, which in turn helps the channel grow. But other than that, stay nerdy, and thank you so much for watching.